At 3:15 a.m., the Gulf sky was completely dark and no radar activity could be detected. A United States stealth aircraft crossed the Iranian border in near total silence, almost impossible to track and leaving virtually no electronic trace. Everything appeared to be unfolding exactly as planned until a warning suddenly echoed through the cockpit. Missile tracking detected. The aircraft's position had been exposed. 6 ground-based defense batteries had acquired the same target at once. Turning back was no longer an option. Fewer than 90 seconds remained before the situation could rapidly escalate. This was not an accidental encounter. The objective was OGAB-44, Iran's $9 billion strategic centerpiece, an underground complex hidden deep inside granite mountains. Built to endure powerful deep penetration munitions, the facility serves as one of Tehran's most important defensive safeguards. After months of covert tension across the Gulf, Washington had chosen to move forward. But Iran was not simply waiting behind its defenses. Its forces were actively searching for anything entering the area. OGAB-44 is a vast strategic maze protected by meter-thick steel doors. The underground facility is large enough to shelter an entire fighter regiment, allowing aircraft to prepare and launch directly from within the mountain. At the center of this defensive network stood the Bavar 373, an Iranian-built air defense system created to rival platforms such as the S-400. Iran's strategy was calculated. Rather than revealing every radar position immediately, its defense network could remain silent and allow foreign aircraft to move deeper into Iranian airspace. Only then would the surrounding batteries activate, creating a carefully prepared interception area. For American pilots, a quiet enemy radar network could be more unsettling than an active one. Silence meant the defenses were still hidden and waiting. At 3:20 a.m. off the coast of the Arabian Sea, the flight deck of the USS Gerald R. Ford was alive with tightly coordinated activity. F-35 Sea Lightning. 2 aircraft had already launched earlier in the operation. When the tracking warning sounded inside the cockpit, the pilot immediately entered a high-G maneuver, pushing the aircraft close to its structural and aerodynamic limits. To challenge the Bavar 373 network, the United States revealed its first major advantage: the ADM-160M MALD. These advanced decoy aircraft were designed to imitate the radar signature of an F-35 with remarkable accuracy. By filling Iranian radar displays with convincing false contacts, the decoys forced defense crews to actively search the sky. It was similar to switching on a flashlight in complete darkness. The moment an Iranian radar began transmitting, its own location could potentially be identified. At 3:22 a.m., the confrontation moved beyond aircraft and radar screens into the invisible world of electronic warfare. High above the Persian Gulf, positioned near the edge of Iranian airspace, was an aircraft that had departed from Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, the EA-37B Compass Call. The aircraft functioned as a flying supercomputer built for electronic operations. Its purpose was to locate the digital command structure behind Iran's air defense network and disrupt its ability to coordinate. The EA-37B began transmitting low probability of interception interference across Iran's frequency-hopping communication channels. The technique was extremely subtle. Iranian operators could barely recognize that interference was present, yet it was still powerful enough to reduce the clarity and reliability of their radar data. Iran, however, had prepared for this possibility. Its defense network activated an advanced countermeasure known as digital reflection. The Bavar 373 stations did more than interfere with American transmissions. They captured incoming signals, delayed them by only a few millionths of a second, and then transmitted them back. This created a serious new danger. Distorted electronic information could confuse identification systems and increase the risk of American pilots mistakenly targeting friendly aircraft. But the United States had also prepared a hidden response. The EA-37B changed its approach. Instead of relying on direct interference, Compass Call began introducing false information into the Bavar 373's processing network. On Iranian displays, one F-35C suddenly appeared to multiply into dozens of aircraft. Moments later, those dozens became hundreds. The artificial contacts moved across the radar map at impossible speeds, constantly changing direction and position. Iranian operators were pulled into a confusing digital pursuit, spending valuable attention and processing capacity on targets that did not physically exist. While the defense crews tried to separate genuine contacts from electronic decoys, the real American formation continued moving through the openings in the network. At 3:30 a.m., with the electronic contest approaching a temporary deadlock, Tehran changed its strategy once again. The confrontation was about to return from the digital battlefield to the physical world as Iran prepared a large-scale saturation response. Along the rugged mountain frontier, the illusion of civilian logistics disappeared in an instant. Dozens of ordinary-looking cargo trucks suddenly dropped their camouflage coverings, revealing containerized drone launch systems, an Iranian innovation capable of transforming almost any road into a temporary tactical airstrip. Within seconds, the quiet night gave way to the sound of engines as hundreds of Shahed-class drones climbed into the sky, spreading outward like a swarm leaving its hive. This was not an unplanned launch. It was a carefully synchronized diversion and response strategy. Iran separated the swarm into two distinct formations. The first consisted of decoy drones designed to make themselves highly visible, deliberately attracting the attention of American sensors and defensive systems. Offshore, Arleigh Burke-class destroyers immediately activated their Aegis networks and launched a wave of SM-2 interceptors toward the approaching formation. At closer distances, F-35 sensors worked intensely to distinguish genuine threats from distractions. Together, the decoys formed a massive aerial screen intended to exhaust the limited supply of costly American interceptors. The second formation followed a very different approach. These modified drones, carrying 50-kilogram high-impact payloads, remained electronically silent. They flew at extremely low altitude, following the shape of the terrain and moving through the shadows of the mountains. Hidden within the confusion created by the louder decoys, they became far more difficult to detect and track. At 3:35 a.m., the challenge facing the F-35C pilots was no longer primarily about fuel. It had become a race against limited ammunition and rapidly disappearing time. The aircraft were surrounded by large numbers of inexpensive targets, forcing pilots to use the restricted supply of interceptors stored inside their internal bays. "We can't separate them," one pilot reported, his voice strained by the pressure of constant high-speed maneuvering. "They're approaching from every direction." For every AIM-120 interceptor, valued at roughly $2 million, Iran risked losing a drone costing approximately $20,000. The imbalance was impossible to ignore. American forces were being held inside the interception area, unable to clearly identify the main objectives through the surrounding mass of aerial contacts. Then, at the edge of the engagement zone, a formation of F-15EX Eagle IIs appeared. Instead of entering close-range encounters, these heavily equipped aircraft operated as airborne ammunition platforms, communication relays, and data processing centers. Using advanced ADCP-2 processors, they collected information from the F-35s, filtered out electronic interference, and coordinated target data across the entire formation. These aircraft were the operation's long-range specialists, constantly refining coordinates and waiting for a single opening that could shift the balance. At 3:40 a.m., as the F-35C formation approached its strategic objectives, Iran activated one of its most powerful electronic countermeasures. Positioned across the peaks of the Granite Mountains was a network of high-output digital radio frequency memory stations. This was not conventional interference that simply filled radar displays with random noise. It was a highly focused attempt to disrupt the algorithms responsible for processing Western sensor data. Iran's digital radio frequency memory technology captured radar transmissions from the F-35, reproduced them millions of times with delays measured in only a few billionths of a second, and transmitted the copied signals back toward the aircraft. The result was an intense electronic overload inside the stealth fighter's processing network. The aircraft's computer remained physically intact, but it was forced to examine an overwhelming amount of misleading information. The sensor fusion system, one of the F-35's most advanced capabilities, began struggling under the enormous volume of artificial data. On the pilot's display, one genuine contact suddenly appeared to multiply into thousands of identical copies. Each false contact carried a radar profile almost indistinguishable from the real object. The flood of virtual information pushed the onboard processors beyond their normal capacity, creating a severe algorithmic bottleneck. A tactical screen that had been clear only moments earlier was now crowded with tens of thousands of red indicators, moving unpredictably across the display as the pilots fought to determine which signals were real. To prevent the entire system from becoming unresponsive, the pilot had only one option: perform a dangerous maneuver, restart the sensor network, and deactivate the active radar. At close range, the American formation had suddenly lost its electronic vision. The digital interference sharply reduced the accuracy of the operation, giving Iran several valuable moments to reposition its remaining assets. Mobile missile launchers quietly rolled out from shelters carved into the rock, moving toward their final positions before the defensive network could be fully neutralized. Then a new tactical order came through: send in the Hog for cleanup. At a forward airfield near the Kuwaiti border, an A-10 Thunderbolt squadron immediately powered up. The veteran aircraft descended to just 30 meters above the ground, following narrow canyons and using the surrounding landscape to remain hidden from radar coverage. At such an extremely low altitude, Digital radio frequency memory interference had far less influence over an aircraft built around hydraulic controls, mechanical backups, and direct pilot input. Unlike the advanced F-35, the A-10 did not rely entirely on a tactical display filled with computer-generated information. Its pilots could use traditional optical sights and direct visual observation. They searched for physical indicators, flashes from defensive positions, heat rising from electronic stations, and activity around artillery sites previously weakened by earlier suppression missions. The A-10 formation entered the final clearing phase. Its GAU-8 Avenger 30mm cannon and Hydra rocket systems began targeting radar equipment that had been left exposed. The aircraft was not operating without support. Its effectiveness depended heavily on the damage already caused to Iran's wider air defense network. The more advanced systems had disrupted and weakened the defenses first, creating an opening for the slower, low-flying aircraft. Against the illuminated night sky, the contrast was striking. Iran's sophisticated electronic systems had created confusion for America's most advanced aircraft. Yet those same conditions offered an opportunity to the Warthog, whose durable design and mechanically backed controls allowed it to operate with less dependence on complex electronic data. The confrontation was approaching its final stage. At 3:55 a.m., the A-10 pilots continued identifying positions through visible and physical clues. Trails from anti-aircraft fire, thermal activity around digital jamming stations, and the lights of mobile radar vehicles moving through the valleys. For the A-10, the electronic disruption sometimes made key positions easier to recognize. Every active transmitter, launch point, or firing position left a trace that could be observed directly. The deep mechanical roar of the GAU-8 Avenger echoed across the mountains as the cannon reached a firing rate of approximately 3,900 rounds per minute. Each controlled burst sent a concentrated stream of specialized armor-penetrating ammunition toward exposed equipment and reinforced positions. The digital transmitters that had overwhelmed the F-35's sensors only moments earlier were rapidly disabled one after another. The A-10s then switched to AGM-65 Maverick missiles and Hydra 70 rockets. Moving through the mountain valleys, the pilots searched for concealed artillery sites, fortified entrances, and equipment hidden near caves. They relied on traditional low-altitude approaches and carefully controlled diving attacks. Locations that modern targeting systems had struggled to identify because of corrupted data were now visible through optical sights and direct observation. Iran responded with portable air defense systems and 23mm anti-aircraft weapons. One A-10 sustained damage to its wing. However, the armored titanium structure surrounding the cockpit and the aircraft's backup mechanical control system allowed the pilot to remain airborne. While many modern aircraft depend heavily on complex electronic networks, the A-10 was designed to continue operating even after suffering significant system failures. Its hydraulic and mechanical backups gave the pilot a level of control that was difficult to disrupt through electronic interference alone. The situation had taken an unexpected turn. Iran had used highly advanced technology to overwhelm America's digital capabilities, but in doing so, it had helped create conditions perfectly suited to a durable aircraft from an earlier generation. With radar coverage disrupted and the airspace filled with electromagnetic interference, the A-10 remained capable of finding positions through direct visual contact and traditional targeting methods. One defensive layer after another surrounding OGAB-44 was gradually removed through close-range, manually guided operations. The remains of radar vehicles and artillery equipment were scattered across the approaches to the underground complex. With the ground-based transmitters disabled, the electronic haze that had covered the battlefield was finally beginning to disappear. High above, the displays inside the F-35s gradually returned to normal as the final sources of interference went offline. The route toward the center of the $9 billion facility was now exposed. The final phase could begin. F-15EX aircraft prepared to release their heavy, penetrating munitions against the reinforced entrances and deeply buried sections of the complex. At 4:05 a.m., after the A-10 Warthogs cleared the remaining ground-based interference stations, the electronic cloud surrounding OGAB-44 faded away. That was when the EA-37B Compass Call launched the operation's decisive electronic maneuver, a large-scale combination of data manipulation and false track insertion. The aircraft transmitted carefully constructed information into Iran's tracking network, causing incoming objects to appear as minor electronic distractions rather than priority targets. While Iranian operators focused on the digital illusions filling their displays, the F-15EX Eagle II formation moved into position for the final strike. A wave of next-generation GBU-72 advanced 5,000-pound penetrating bombs separated from the aircraft and accelerated toward their designated coordinates. The targeting information had been confirmed through direct observation by the A-10 pilots, giving the incoming weapons highly precise reference points. Each reinforced munition weighed more than 2 tons and was designed to pass through thick layers of rock and fortified material before activating inside the buried structure. Moments after release, a warning sounded inside one of the F-15EX cockpits. A defensive missile had been detected at extremely close range. The pilot faced an immediate decision: abandon the approach and maneuver away, or remain on course for another 3 seconds to preserve the guidance solution aimed at the tunnel entrance. He tightened his grip on the controls and held the aircraft steady. The incoming missile passed dangerously close to the wing, but the heavy munitions had already left their racks and were continuing toward the target. Smoke and fire rose from the granite mountain as the F-35 and F-15EX formations began regrouping for the journey back toward the Arabian Sea. On the horizon, the flight deck of the USS Gerald R. Ford waited for the returning aircraft after a mission that would be remembered for years. Only 90 seconds earlier, one F-35 pilot had believed the operation was on the verge of failure. Now, powerful shockwaves rising from deep inside the mountain suggested that the final phase had reached its objective. The defensive network surrounding Oghab 44 was rapidly losing its ability to function. Reinforced entrances had been breached from within, communication systems had gone silent, and the underground facility could no longer operate as it had before. The United States completed the mission with limited losses, demonstrating how electronic operations, coordinated targeting, and conventional air power could be combined in a single campaign. Yet one of the most important features of the A-10 Thunderbolt II was not its famous GAU-8 cannon. It was the aircraft's ability to remain controllable even after most of its electronic systems stopped functioning. Hidden inside the A-10 was a capability rarely found in modern combat aircraft: the option to switch to direct mechanical flight controls. No advanced computers, no sensor fusion network, just the pilot, the aircraft, and a system of physical control cables. In an era when nearly every modern fighter depends on algorithms, connected sensors, and digital displays, that design may appear outdated. But it was precisely this older approach that allowed the aircraft to remain operational when the surrounding airspace became overwhelmed by electronic interference. That night, as digital warfare transformed the sky into confusion, the A-10 did not need a perfect electronic picture. It only needed to remain airborne, respond to the pilot, and continue moving forward. And in the final moments of the operation, that proved to be enough.